Okay, tell me a little about yourself, your name, and where you come from.
Okay, my name is Melissa Higgins, and I was born in Kansas City, Missouri. Lived most of my life, my adult life, in Honolulu, Hawaii. Moved here to Dallas about 6 years ago. I've had MS now for 24 years. I developed it right after I graduated college, and I was working in a laboratory at the time. I was a chemist, and I also got my license so I could work in medical laboratories, and that's what I was primarily doing at the time when it hit me. And ironically, you know, a lot of people, when MS comes on, it's very mild. For me, it was quite strong when it came on. It affected my legs. First, from the very get-go, I was falling, tripping, and at work, that's where I noticed it particularly, because I was just falling constantly, and I had never done that before. So I went in and had all the tests done. At that time, they told me I had probably at max 5 years, and I would be permanently in a wheelchair. And it was very depressing. I had only been, like I said, I hadn't been working even a year yet. I hadn't been married but a year. And so I felt like my life was just beginning.
How old were you at this point?
I was 24. So I felt like my life was basically over. They were telling me, and I had always wanted to travel a lot. That's what I loved to do. We traveled a lot when I was growing up. I had a lot of interest in that. I wanted to go see the world. And how, you know, I just kept thinking, how am I going to do that in a wheelchair? You know, granted you can, but it's going to be so much harder, and am I even going to feel like doing it? And 5 years didn't seem like a very long time. But at that time, there was no treatments, anything. You know, there was just nothing. You had a relapse, you went and you got steroids to stop the immune system from attacking itself, but there was nothing to slow it down, nothing to, you know, of course there's nothing to halt it yet, but there's nothing, at least now there's drugs that slow it and keep it from crippling people so early in life like it used to. So after, you know, I went through the usual acceptance process, I think, that most people do, but after that I just kind of decided, well, if this is what I've got, then it's going to be the best 5 years, if that's what I've got, or 3 years, or however many years. So my husband and I, at that point, decided we took off. I remember I just gotten out of the hospital, and within like 2 weeks we went to Europe, and we were over there traveling around, going all over the place. Got permission to leave from work from our employers. Gone for quite a long time. We came back in the fall. Then we went around the Caribbean, but you know, Bahamas, Jamaica. Went on a cruise. Just did all kinds of stuff. Then come January, came back home for Christmas, and then come January, I announced to our parents we were putting our house up for rent. We're going to go to Hawaii and just try living over there for a while. And we were planning to stay 2 years. We ended up staying 12. So in the meantime, while I'm over there, I actually got better, and I had the relapse and remitting form, so it kind of subsided. And I've had relapses, obviously, off and on over the years. Some very bad, some not so bad. But during that time, they came out with the disease-modifying drugs and stuff, and so that has slowed me down, and so here I am now, you know. And I did continue to work this whole time. I've not been out of work, with the exception of 2 times when I had to do disability for a short period of time until I could get through the relapse and then get back to work. But only twice, and I'm still hanging in there, still traveling. I've been to 26 countries now. I've been to every state in the United States, so I did that as well. So everything really I wanted to do, I feel like I've done. But certainly, you know, it's always something that's in the back of my mind, and you know, that it's just a part of me, really. It's not like I live in fear of it, but it's a part of me. It's not something that I can ever just forget that it's there. And so I guess it was 2 years ago, after we moved here to Dallas, I had another relapse, just kind of out of the blue. It hit me. That's the way MS does, and you never know how bad it's going to be. But this time it was my legs that were affected again, and probably just pretty similar to the very first relapse, and how bad it was. But the main thing I noticed was that my legs began swelling huge. My lower calves, my ankles, swelling up huge, and so I went to my neurologist, concerned about it. He thought maybe I had a blood clot, and they were going to send me for testing for that. And I went to the place where I had my MRIs done, and they referred people to Dr. Lee, and that's how I got to see Dr. Lee. They sent me to him, and he was the one that, the nicest thing about it, I can tell you, that's so great about seeing Dr. Lee is you go in for your checkup. He checks you right then and there. I remember that day that my doctor had ordered a scan on my lower left leg looking for a blood clot. Well, there was no blood clot because that wasn't my problem, but.
First day of Dr. Lee.
Okay. So, came in to see Dr. Lee, and the order was to check for a blood clot in my lower left leg, because the left leg was much more pronounced than the right leg in the swelling. And there was no blood clot, because that wasn't the problem. I had chronic venous insufficiency, and secondary to the multiple sclerosis and the muscle weakness that was being caused by that in my legs, probably over many years, you know, building up. And this last relapse was probably like the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. But the nice thing about seeing Dr. Lee was that I really appreciate anyway, is I went in that day, he examined me, said, I'm going to look at the rest of your leg. And then he said, okay, I want to compare it to your right leg. And, you know, most times when you go get these things done, I've had these done before on my legs to check in years past. Probably before this procedure was being done, but many years ago I've had it done several times. And usually you have a technician that does the test, you know, like a radiology technician. Then they have somebody read the result. Then the result is sent to your neurologist. Then your neurologist confers to you what it is, and if something has to be done, then you go from there to the specialist. Where with this, it was so nice because it's a doctor doing the actual procedure. And so if he sees anything unusual, he can just check it out right then and there. There's no more like having to say, oh, you've got this problem in your right leg too, which is what he found. I had it in both legs, and it wasn't blood clot at all, it was something else. So he was able to just do the test, find out right then and there, then order the procedure, set the date with me. And so in one appointment, I walked out with a diagnosis, not having to wait to hear it from my neurologist that ordered the test. I got the diagnosis that same day I had the test done. I had my first surgical procedure set up that day. And you know, how often do you get to do that? You know, usually you have so many steps in between. So I really appreciated that, and I told him that was a definite benefit. And when I went to have it done at the MRI place, they told me, they said I would be having it done with Dr. Lee, and I said, oh, he doesn't? And they said, yes, he prefers to do all of his own procedures, which is really nice, because then he starts the whole process, and he does the whole thing from start to end. Nice continuity that you don't always get in healthcare. So just a little sidebar there, something that I liked. But anyway, yeah, so it diagnosed me with this condition, and started having the procedures done. I ended up, I think, a total of 9 of them I had to have. So I had quite a lot of vein damage. I don't know what's typical, but I think I had maybe more than the average. But it was just amazing. I took pictures all along, and you could just see the progression.
Do you have
of
those
each.
pictures?
Dr. Lee actually has them. I
good.
gave him some copies of them. Yeah, so it was amazing. I have one that's from the side. You can't even tell what's my calf or my thigh. My calf was as big as my thigh was, literally. Taking you like from an angle where your leg's like this from the side. But yeah, with each one you could see. And I was actually taking the photos to send to my mom over the internet. So they're not professional, but you know, you can. I was glad in the end I had done it, because I wasn't realizing it was going to be such a, you know, a nice progression.
Nice that you did it too.
Yes, that's true. So he has those on hand, and I gave him a set of them, and I gave my neurologist some as well. He was very impressed. As a matter of fact, he told me that he had not. My neurologist told me that day when I took him in that he was not aware of it, and he said, you can't argue with this. That's what he did. He looked at me and he goes, you cannot argue with this, because the photos are just so, it's just such a drastic difference. And I never had much pain. I know that pain is very typical with this, but that I think is more because of me. I just don't tend to have a lot of pain with things. So I never did have that, but the swelling definitely went down. And the amazing thing about it that I was not expecting, but that I've heard other people say since I've had this done and kind of researched and stuff, you feel so much better after you have it done. I remember coming in after the first or second, I think, appointment, and I said to Dr. Lee, I thought it was maybe in my head, but I said, am I crazy or am I feeling better? Because I think I feel better. And he said, no, you have probably 15 to 20% of your blood supply just sitting down there, which means you're not getting enough to your other body parts. Like if you were low on blood, you feel tired, you feel, you know, weak. And that was what I noticed, was all of a sudden I had so much energy. My husband noticed it. He commented that all of a sudden I was feeling like doing things around the house and going out and doing stuff where I'd been tired, very tired. And of course, having MS, tired's not something you necessarily worry too much about. It just kind of goes with it. And so it can kind of creep up on you and you don't realize it, you know, over time. And I think that's what had happened. So when I had the first or second procedure, it was like, wow, I think this is making me feeling better, but I just didn't know if it was like in my head or...
After each procedure, did you notice